My fellow Americans,
become involved when disinformation poses a threat to the security of our country. It is when there's a connectivity to a threat to our country. It could be a threat, a connectivity to violence. And what this working group does, is precisely what I would think you would want it to do, which is to take a look at the work, the disinformation work that our department has done and ask the following questions. Do we have policies? Do we have guardrails? Do we have standards?
But here's the problem. We can't even agree. We can't even agree what disinformation is. You can't even agree that it was disinformation, that the Russians fed information to the Steele dossier. If you can't agree to that, how are we ever going to come to an agreement on what is disinformation so you can police it on social media?
Senator, I have 2 points, if I may finish. Number one, that what this office, what this working group does, because it's not an office, what this working group does is ensure that there are guardrails, definitions, standards to make sure that the free speech rights, the civil rights, civil liberties, and privacy rights of individuals.
So do you think COVID disinformation threatens our national security?
And number two, if I may, Senator, and number two, is it your proposition that when the cartels spread disinformation with respect to our immigration policies to try to lure vulnerable migrants to our border illegally?
I think you've got no idea what disinformation is, and I don't think the government's capable of it. Do you know who the greatest propagator of disinformation in the history of the world is? The U.S. government. Are you familiar with McNamara, the Pentagon Papers? Are you familiar with George W. Bush and the weapons of mass destruction? Are you familiar with Iran-Contra? I mean, think of all the debates and disputes we've had over the last 50 years in our country. We work them out by debating them. We don't work them out by the government being the arbiter. I don't want you guardrails. I want you to have nothing to do with speech. You think we can't determine, speech by traffickers is disinformation? You think the American people are so stupid they need you to tell them what the truth is? You can't even admit what the truth is with the Steele dossier. I don't trust government to figure out what the truth is. Government is largely disseminating disinformation.
it would have been more appropriate for Mr. Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, to address this House according to Article 144, an article which was specifically designed to debate violations of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law, which is clearly the case with Mr. Trudeau. Then again, a Prime Minister who openly admires the Chinese basic dictatorship, who tramples on fundamental rights by persecuting and criminalizing his own citizens as terrorists just because they dared to stand up to his perverted concept of democracy, should not be allowed to speak in this House at all. Mr. Trudeau, you are a disgrace for any democracy. Please spare us your presence. Thank you.
The Vietnam War and the push for US involvement was a result of the Gulf of Tonkin incident. A lie. The Iraq War famously is a result of lies. Wars in Somalia are a result of lies. The Second World War and the German invasion of Poland was a result of carefully constructed lies. That is war by media. Let us ask ourselves, of the complicit media, which is the majority of the mainstream press, what is the average death count attributed to each journalist?
know this as a bit of an aside, but in terms of how you think about problem sets, when I was a cadet, what's the cadet motto at West Point? You will not lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those who do. I was the CI director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire training courses.
Rationality belongs to the cool observers, but because of the stupidity of the average man, he follows not reason but faith, and the naive faith of the proletarian requires necessary illusion and emotionally potent oversimplifications, which have to be provided by myth makers to keep the ordinary person on the right course.
Do you think you should be the one to be able to decide when to pull the trigger?
No, sir.
Isn't that what this is about? If you adopt the position that any time you are denied, you're particular, and there's 4 groups out there, and inspectors, you're the group you headed, anytime you are denied, that ipso facto requires the United States and the Security Council to act on what they said they would do, which is to use whatever means necessary to take on Saddam Hussein so you can get into that particular facility. Is that not correct? Is that not your position?
Mr. Senator, I have a job to do, or I had a job to do, and that was to disarm Iraq in accordance with the provisions of relevant resolutions.
With all due respect, I'm not trying to be confrontational. I'm trying to get this as clear as I can. I really mean this now. You have an absolute logic. You put together a very tight syllogism here. You've indicated that your job is to disarm. The only way you can disarm is to have access. The only way you can have access is either with permission on the part of Iraq, or if denied, forced access, right?
Compelled access. Yes.
Compelled. Well, okay, compelled. You sound like the lawyer and I sound like the military guy. I mean, compelled, where I come from, when my old man said you're compelled, it meant I was forced. I mean, it was a real simple proposition. It wasn't, wasn't much to debate. Now, there is a clear logic to that. And that's what I mean when I say I respect your position. But that means that whenever you choose a target that warrants inspection and you are denied, that ipso facto, at that moment, the only way your position can be satisfied or sustained is if the UN Security Council or the United States, acting unilaterally, uses force to guarantee access. Is not that true?
Yes, sir.
Now, that means that you get to choose the time and place when we would use force, if we use force.
No, sir.
Of course you do. If you choose the site and it's denied.
And we coordinate with the member states to include the United States.
Exactly.
And prior to us going in, we have their agreement that this indeed is an inspection worth doing.
Okay, inspection worth doing, everybody's agreed it's worth doing, and it gets stopped.
Yes, sir.
At that moment, we're an automatic pilot as far as you're concerned. Period. No ifs, ands, or buts. Now, I respect that. But now, it seems to me the Secretary of State might have a slightly different problem. Secretary of State might be sitting there and saying, now look over there on that side. Now, I remember so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, and the 12 people on this side, they're all the ones that said they didn't want to use force. Now, I'm going to have to go tell the President now that we should, or Secretary Cohen, unleash whatever it takes to get it done. And our military assessment is the same as the Major's. The Major's assessment is, privately held but publicly acknowledged later, that airstrikes alone aren't going to do this. Saddam's not going to cave on this. So, now here's the deal. I recommended the President have at it and let the chips fall where they may. A reasonable position for the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State to take. But I respectfully suggest, Major, I respectfully suggest they have a responsibility slightly above your pay grade. Slightly above your pay grade. To decide whether or not to take the nation to war alone. Or to take the nation to war partway. Or to take the nation to war halfway. That's a real tough decision. That's why they get paid the big bucks. That's why they get the limos and you don't. I mean this sincerely. I'm not trying to be flip. Because I think, and that's why I said at the outset, the reason why I'm glad you did what you did, we should come to our milk. We should make a decision. But in terms of whether the Secretary of State has no more to consider than you do as the arms inspector, you didn't get in, didn't get my job done, get me in. Period. You made the deal, right? That's the deal. A deal's a deal. Get me in. Scott Ritter, I'm ready to go. It's not how it works. Now, maybe it should work that way. But wouldn't you acknowledge that if you were President of the United States or the Secretary of State, you'd sit there and say, now, okay, old Scotty boy didn't get in. We said he should get in. We want him to get in. It's important that he does get in. They're not going to let him in, so what are we going to do now? We know that France and Russia aren't going to be with us. We're quite confident China's not. We've already run those traps. They're not there. We're not sure where the United States Senate is, but have at it, boys. Go get them. And by the way, Scott and the boys say air power's not enough. I think it's a legitimate debate, Scott, Major. I think it's a legitimate debate. But I don't think we should be putting it in the context of you have somebody up there at state saying, look, how can we weasel out of this agreement? We want to let this guy out there hanging. We're not this. It's a very practical political decision. Same kind of decision General Powell made. Same kind of decision President Bush made. Every president, every Secretary of State has to do it. Like I said, they get paid more than you. Their job's a hell of a lot more complicated than yours. They may have made the wrong decision, and you brought it to light. We should address it. We should say straight up where we are, and we should do it. And for that, I thank you. But it's above your pay grade.
no doubt that Saddam Hussein has biological weapons and the capability to rapidly produce more, many more. And he has the ability to dispense these lethal poisons and diseases in ways that can cause massive death and destruction. If biological weapons seem too terrible to contemplate, chemical weapons are equally chilling. UNMOVIC already laid out much of this, and it is documented for all of us to read in UNSCOM's 1999 report on the subject. If we consider just one category of missing weaponry, 6,500 bombs from the Iran-Iraq war, UNMOVIC says the amount of chemical agent in them would be on the order of 1,000 tons. These quantities of chemical weapons are now unaccounted for. Dr. Blick says, quipped that, quote, mustard gas is not marmalade. You are supposed to know what you did with it. We believe Saddam Hussein knows what he did with it, and he has not come clean with the international community. We have evidence these weapons existed. What we don't have is evidence from Iraq that they have been destroyed or where they are. That is what we are still waiting for.
Killed a million people in Iraq.
That is a separate...
You killed a million people in Iraq. It's incredible that you have the brass neck to be sitting here now urging another Iraq war
George,
after
if
what
I
you've
was still
already
in
done.
Parliament,
One of the four principal functions of the CIA is to gather intelligence and ideally forward it to the president, the users of information, the policymakers, as they say. There are other functions, however, some of them more legitimate than others. One is to run secret wars, the covert action that's written and talked about so much, like what's happening in Nicaragua today from Honduras. Another thing is to disseminate propaganda to influence people's minds, and this is a major function of the CIA. And unfortunately, of course, it overlaps into the gathering of information. You have contact with a journalist You will give him true stories, you'll get information from him, you'll also give him false stories. For example, in my war, the Angola war that I helped to manage, 1/3 of my staff was propaganda. Ironically, it's called covert action inside the CIA. Outside, that means the violent part. I had propagandists all over the world, principally in London, Kinshasa, and Zambia. We would take stories which we would write and put them in the Zambia Time, and then pull them out and send them to a journalist on our payroll in Europe. But his cover story, you see, would be that he'd gotten them from his stringer in Lusaka, who had gotten them from the Zambia Time. We had the complicity of the government of Zambia, Kenneth Kaunda, if you will, to put these false stories into his newspapers. But after that point, the journalists, Reuters and AFP, the management was not witting of it. Now, our contact man in Europe was, and we pumped just dozens of stories about Cuban atrocities, Cuban rapists. In one case, we had the Cuban rapists caught and tried by the Ovimbundu maidens who had been their victims, and then we ran photographs that made almost every newspaper in the country of the Cubans being executed by the Ovimbundu women who supposedly had been their victims.
These were fake photos?
Oh, absolutely. We didn't know of one single atrocity committed by the Cubans. It was pure, raw, false propaganda to create an illusion of communists, eating babies for breakfast and that sort of totally false propaganda.
Welcome to Redacted on this Thursday night. I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm Natalie Morris. Welcome to September, everybody.
Welcome to September. Can you smell that?
Pumpkins?
Can you smell that? That is a fresh news show that we've got, just fresh out of the oven. Tonight's show is fresh. It's deep. It's chock full of goodness.
It's steaming hot.
It's a steaming hot show. It's a steaming hot cross bun for you tonight.
It's just out of the oven.
You even got Soho behind you. So hot.
So hot.
It's Soho. Welcome.
So
as
hot.
a Redacted member. You too can have your name pop up there if you join as a Redacted channel member.
I want to welcome to the channel, who just became a channel subscriber.
That also is an awesome name. How'd you guys get these easy names?
I know.
I think if I wanted to be I'd have to be like 562, DHS.
I should mention we're nearing a million. We're nearing 1 million subscribers. We might even hit 1 million subscribers by the.
At
what's the number?
995, 197.
I can't
1 million.
stand it.
Sister-in-law got some balloons. 1 million balloon, not 1 million balloons, but in the shape of 1 million. So
you guys are gonna suffocate in there.
I know. I'll be like, I can't see you through all these
We're
balloons.
Float away like in the movie Up.
Yeah.
What happened to the show? They're gone. 1 million balloons.
So we've got a very big.
They've ascended.
We've got a fresh, really hot show for you tonight. So buckle up, grab your drink of choice this afternoon. Coming up on tonight's show, we are going to talk about the nuclear inspectors that just arrived in the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. We're going to get you the very latest. There was a lot of drama this morning before their arrival. Was it a foiled plot to actually capture these inspectors? There's so many pieces to this story. We're going to get to that. Plus a lot of updates on these Ukrainian oil oligarchs who have gone missing and or killed. What in the world is going on? So we'll bring you those stories.
Plus, the United Nations released a report today accusing China of human rights abuse against the Uyghurs. We're going to go through exactly what they say and what they claim and try to understand what it is they are defining as human rights abuse. And this is a very sensitive story and a very bizarre report.
Yeah. We're also going to look at the FAA mandates for vaccines, whistleblowers speaking out from the FAA on this story. We've got an interesting report, some great journalism we're going to share with you tonight on that, a special private Zoom call with these FAA whistleblowers who received the vaccines, these pilots, and then, we're not really allowed to speak out against it. and now facing neurological issues, other problems. And
exactly what you want from your pilot.
Yeah, so
right?
what a quandary, right? So they speak out, they lose their job, but they're also now flying, and are they putting lives at risk because they're behind the wheel of the cockpit or behind the, what do you call it, joystick? I don't even know what you say. They're in the cockpit.
Flight stick?
Flight stick, yes.
They're behind the rudders.
They're behind the flight stick. Also, Germany facing a crisis. They are sticking to their guns and wanting to double down on sanctions, while a big update on the gas pipeline to Germany and Europe. All that to say, we've got a very hot and crusty show for you today. That's the name of a restaurant in New York City where you go get bagels, hot and crusty. Just like tonight's show, Redacted starts right now.
You speak for yourself. I am not crusty. I took a bath.
I took a bath too. I'm just saying the show is hot. It's hot and bothered, hot and crusty, like like
hot and steamy.
I don't think you want to give everything.
You know what's crazy is that's the name. That's the name of a bagel shop in New York City.
That's exactly
right
what you want from your breakfast. For it to be hot and crusty. That is not, I repeat, not what you want from your news show. We are not crusty. We are fresh.
That's what I like in my women, hot and crusty.
Stop using that adjective.
We should mention we have a daily newsletter. You should all subscribe to it. It is delivered to you first thing in the morning while you're having your morning bagel or your morning coffee or your morning tea, wherever you are in the world. Or if you're in Australia and you're going to bed, it doesn't matter. You can read it. It's if you go to redacted.inc, that's the website, and you click on the button where it says, hey, get the newsletter. It's free. And we cover about 5 or 6 stories delivered to your inbox first thing in the morning. Now, the email address will come from me, Clayton, at redacted.inc. Feel free to send me an email, but please drag that email over into your inbox or to your VIPs, because Google has deemed us dangerous. I think Yahoo has also deemed us that way and put us in promotions folders. So if you have us in your contacts, you'll get the newsletter every day. Any public service announcements you want to make before we get started? No. Oh, did you see this, by the way? If you're thinking about traveling next summer and you want to rent an Italian villa, well, Vladimir Zelensky, president of Ukraine, has a Italian villa that you can rent. This story made me laugh this morning. This is from an Italian newspaper. So that Vladimir Zelensky has this luxury Italian villa that he rents out for $50,000 per month.
50 million euro, it says. Zelensky affita Russi.
He's selling it. He's trying to sell it, I think, as well. But 50 milia euro, which I guess means in Italian is $50,000 per month. Now, there's a lovely Russian couple that is actually renting it out right now.
He has not sanctioned them out of his
No, so he's renting
tenancy?
it to Russians. He's renting it to Russians. Now, this couple, they live in London, but they are Russian citizens. Went there on holiday, so he's making money off of Russians.
While he tells the rest of the world to not do business with Russians.
Exactly. I just love the hypocrisy. I'm just calling it out for the hypocrisy side of it.
That is how you stick it to Putin, is by fleecing Russian citizens of 50 million.
Okay.
That's part of his strategy. Yes. The Zelensky house is located in the very center of Forte dei Marmi. There's jogging and cycling tracks, cozy restaurants, beautiful houses all around. The beaches of Forte dei Marmi are recognized as some of the best in Italy. On the territory plot, there's a 2-story house, 480 square meters, and a swimming pool. And a number of Russian publications are calling this out today. It's quite embarrassing. Now, apparently, he's also trying to simultaneously sell the property. But $50,000 a month?
Well, I mean, would he sell to a Russian person?
I mean, maybe these Russians are actually there looking at it as possible investment property. Maybe they like it. Maybe they'll do like a rent to buy kind of a situation.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Since we paid for it, do we get a discount, the United States citizens?
Yeah, if you, as an American taxpayer, since you foot the bill for this, all you have to do, you get a discount on Airbnb when you order the Zelensky property.
Just put in code USA at checkout.
Just put in code fleeced. And you'll save a few bucks. You'll save a few bucks. All right, we've got a busy show for you. It is back to school day around here, so we are primed and ready. We are really excited about today's show.
Our kids did start school today, and while we were researching for the show, I was able to complete thoughts. That was really novel.
So she wrote in the newsletter at the beginning of today's newsletter about not being able to complete a thought.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I miss my three little turds. I love them, but it really.
And you
was
told me
strange.
to not say hot and crusty.
Yeah, but I can call my kids
But
little
turds,
turds.
okay.
Yeah, but little kid, okay.
But anyone who has school age kids knows that when they go back to school and you get to actually concentrate on things that are important to you as an adult, it's lovely. That's all I'm going to say.
So all of that to say, we've concentrated a lot on tonight's show. So thank you so much.
I tried very hard.
Thank you so much for subscribing and smashing that like button. It really helps us push it further out into the algorithm. When you just do that one little thing, when you smash that like button, it actually pushes us further out. And thanks to all of our supporters over on Rumble as well, free of censorship. Yes, we love all the folks who are watching us live right now on Rumble as well. All right. Let's get to our top story, which is huge developments in Ukraine this morning into the afternoon, and updates still coming in at this hour. It is dark there now. It is nighttime, so things will probably pick up tomorrow again as as International Atomic Energy Agency inspectors. Get our weapons inspectors / nuclear inspectors mixed up. They have made their long-awaited trip to Ukraine. Headed to the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. They've arrived. The group is made up of 14 people who are looking for answers about what is going on at this power plant, right? We've had a lot of questions as to, well, who's been shelling this thing, right? If you listen to the Western media, who is it?
Well, the Western media is repeating Ukraine's accusations that it's Russian shelling. But then again, this plant has been in the hands of Russia since early in the conflict, March-April timeframe. So it is controlled by Russian forces. So Russia is saying, why would we fire on our own troops? Russia continues to say that it is Ukrainian forces that are shelling this plant, which will hurt everyone in and around that region and across borders, obviously. Russia also showed off images of those shells, which seem to be British, right? So they were saying that they had been gifted to Ukraine from Britain.
We have separate reports about HIMARS attacks as well.
Yes.
American HIMARS weapons that were used. As Scott Ritter, we had on the show, talked about, that's a war crime. He says, why is the Western media ignoring this? So all of that to say, this is what the inspectors are looking for.
And
right?
Russia has been basically begging this institution to please come and see for yourself, because yes, this is dangerous for everybody.
So the inspectors arrived yesterday in Kiev. Then they made their way towards the Zaporizhzhia area, this power plant, this afternoon. And this morning we got word shortly after lunchtime that the Ukrainian military held them up for 3 hours, blocking their access to the area. So here we have a photo. You can see these inspectors being blocked. They're basically pleading with them here. We're here for 3 hours. They were basically having to discuss a passage because of Ukrainian soldiers getting in their way. So, I mean, this is unbelievable. Why has the Ukrainian military been so reluctant to let inspectors into the plant? And I mentioned this earlier to you, and you said, it's like, oh yeah, hold on, let me clean up the house real quick before you go there. They knew they were coming.
Yes.
That wasn't Zelensky on the right, was it? With the hat.
No, I know. That's a little chubbier guy, but that's not.
Looks a little like him. Huh?
I know. It does. Like it's his big brother.
Okay.
His doppelganger.
Bob Zelensky.
Bob Zelensky's not heavy. It's his brother.
That's right.
He maintains the Italian villa.
So we already know the answer to all of this, which is like, of course, that what they're hiding there at the plant, right? That's exactly what we've been hearing from multiple sources. That, of course, the shelling coming from western part of Ukraine coming into this area, you would be able to track that and see the angle of these shells, where they're coming from. And again, Russia. And here's a shell bombing that happened this morning. So these are shell videos that are just from this morning. According to Intel Republic, which has been doing some excellent boots on the ground journalism, we learned that overnight, this is an amazing story, 60 Ukrainian soldiers. You probably will not see this in the mainstream media at all. I would really challenge CNN to actually cover this part of the story. So overnight, a group of 60 Ukrainian commandos, 2 commando groups with 7 boats, launched across the river to try to take back the Zaporizhzhia power plant. Now, they attacked the area using shells that we just showed you in this video, and that was this morning. So these 60 Ukrainian soldiers try to attack the plant on boats. Then the Russian Air Force took them out, and 3 of them are now in custody. 2 of them are in critical condition, and I'm absolutely sure that the the nuclear inspectors maybe would love to speak with them.
Yes.
You know, like, hey, we got some guys in the hospital. They were trying to show up this morning. Maybe we should go and talk to those guys. We also learned this afternoon that, and Gonzalo Lira is tweeting this, I've seen this now in multiple reports, that he's jokingly calling this a rumor, but you can read between the lines. We don't have confirmation of this yet. I've heard from multiple sources on this that this was planned by the British, the British military, the British special forces, to carry out this early morning attack on the power plant. And the goal, I'm just going to go through what Gonzalo says here, is that this was Boris Johnson himself was pushing for this insanity. A group of British trained Ukrainian commandos would stage an amphibious raid on this area and form a beachhead for a larger attack group of the power plant. Their plan was to take the International Atomic Energy Agency inspectors as hostages and then mine the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. And then get this, he says, they would pretend to be Russian commandos so they could blame it on Russians.
That's ridiculous. This is an Avengers movie.
I know. But why were these 60, that happened. 60 commandos tried to storm the plant this morning, and they were taken out by the Russian Air Force. That's been confirmed by multiple news outlets this afternoon. So, and there's 3 of them were captured, 2 of them in critical condition, 1 who may be able to speak to the press. Or inspectors or other people.
According to this theory, there are Ukrainian military members who could act convincingly as if they are Russians. They are capable of doing that.
Sure. I mean, if they can speak fluent Russian, it's not uncommon at all.
And like, yes, I'm wearing this uniform, and absolutely I am. I mean, I'm not saying that it's not, of course, many people in Ukraine speak Russian. In fact, Ukrainian is a fairly recent language to that region. So,
let's go through some of the rest of it then to kind of maybe answer this. So the Russians appear to have foiled this whole operation, destroying 47 commandos with these air attacks, but capturing at least 2 and an additional 2 who are in critical condition. If they survive, the Russians will have 4 witnesses who can testify to this insanity. Whoever thought this was a rational, reasonable plan is beyond desperate. This is insanity on a major scale. It's a global nuclear blackmail, and the current information points to MI6 and Boris Johnson. According to the current rumor, as he says it, it was the British MI6 that planned this insane operation from those suburban offices in Kiev at the behest and the encouragement of Boris Johnson, who, by the way, gave his last speech today, telling people to go out and buy new tea kettles in Britain. That's exactly what he said. You'll save money on your electric bill by going and buying a new tea kettle. Might cost you £20, but you'll save in the long run because it's a new tea kettle, and that's how we'll solve Britain's energy crisis.
The new ones are more energy efficient. I gotcha.
That was his last speech.
And then the landfill will be filled with all old tea kettles.
I would love to hear in our chat. Let us know, you guys watching us live right now. I mean, these 60 commandos were killed, 47 of them at least, we know, and a number of them captured. 7 boats were used in this attack, and they knew these inspectors were coming there today. They arrived in Kiev yesterday. This was announced and on the books and happening. Why in the hell would they put an attack towards a nuclear power plant when these inspectors are showing up? I mean, just let me know in the chat what you think about it. Because can you come up with another idea? I don't know.
And let's prove to them we're not shelling there by attacking there in a different way.
Yeah, that went really well. It'll be interesting to see, though, what reports come out. So let's go further into this inspection, because I want to see if the UN and these atomic energy inspectors actually want to find out why were these commandos coming there in the first place? Like, what's the point of that? And will we hear any of that in their report? Anyway, so we also learned this afternoon from the Intel Republic. The Zaporizhzhia administration says failed Ukrainian army attempt to take control of Zaporizhzhia was at the command of the British Special Services. Ukrainian paratroopers taking part were trained abroad, as Russian Ministry of Defense says Kiev's forces taking part in the assault were almost completely destroyed. Okay?
Now, we had independent reports of Ukrainian soldiers being trained in the United Kingdom just as recently as last week, right?
Right.
I can't remember the
It was last
context
week.
in which
it was in Kent. It was in,
Yes.
it was in Kent in the UK.
Okay, so we know that those people exist.
Yes, they absolutely exist. We have plenty of reports of them being trained in Denmark, in Belgium, in the UK, in Germany. I mean, all sorts of training going on in Germany as well. So I'm curious. A lot of people said, I saw someone from Sweden in our chat just saying, no, I've not heard any of this in Sweden. Like, we're not hearing any of these reports. I just would be curious, in your local news reports that you watch in your country, do you get this kind of news? Are you seeing any of these stories? Or do you just get the propaganda that they spin to you? So anyway, it was a suicide mission. If they signed up for this, it was a suicide mission. They knew they were going to be taken out. After a 3-hour delay, after this bombardment this morning, then finally, these inspectors were allowed to actually make their way to the power plant. Here's video of them in the convoy making their way down the road there as the International Atomic Energy Agency on their way to the power plant. And then here they are pulling in. We have video of that too, of them pulling in the gate. Here they're pulling up to, there's reactor number 1. Pulling in there. And then, so they pulled in all the big convoy. And then Rafael Grossi, who is in charge of this, the Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, he says, look, the whole world, the attention has been on this. There he is. That's Grossi. On this power plant. We've been watching it from the very beginning, he says, but it was necessary to take a step forward and to stabilize the situation. So then he spoke on camera. Again, Intel Republic has some video here. I want to play that one first, Rossi at the power plant, where he's talking about some of the concerns and getting some answers here. So listen to Rossi talking about what they've accomplished today in a few short hours at the power plant. Listen.
We are finishing our long-awaited visit to the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. I have just completed a first tour of the key areas that we wanted to see in this first approach to the whole facility. Of course, there is a lot more to do. My team is staying on, and more importantly, and most importantly, we are establishing a continued presence from the IAEA here.
Okay.
All right, so they're sticking around, right? They're not here for you to prove anything in one day.
No, till September 3rd.
Continued presence.
September 3rd, they're going to be there looking and doing their reporting. So we'll find out. I guess, we're going to have to wait for their findings, They're going to leave the inspectors there until the 3rd of September. And then when we have an update from the International Atomic Energy Agency on this story and what they conclude, my fear is, I'll just give them my fear, is that we'll get a wishy-washy report from them with nothing really conclusive. And then there won't be anything in there about this commando raid this morning. So it'll be wishy-washy, and
how
it'll
can
be
you get anything
empty.
And how can you get anything conclusive in basically 2.5 days?
Well, I mean, good question. I think one thing, like Scott Ritter said, who was a weapons inspector, right? He said you'd very quickly be able to see the direction of the shell, the azimuth of the shell line, where the directions came from, where the shells were fired from. That's something you can quickly do. So they'd be able to point out the holes in the roof, the shell casings, the impact craters, and all of that.
Unless it's been tampered with, of course.
What's interesting is this person in the chat had said, we're not hearing about this at all in Sweden, right? So speaking of nuclear catastrophes, Chernobyl happened on a Friday night, right?
Right.
Early Friday in the morning. And the government went the whole weekend without acknowledging it. So people were like jogging. Kids went out and did PE.
Kids were playing.
Things, everything is normal. Until 9 a.m. on Monday morning, a nuclear power station in Sweden detected abnormal radiation levels in the air by a nuclear dust cloud somewhere drifting, right,
So Sweden
it
figured
was
it out.
Sweden that first acknowledged Chernobyl, not the government, right? So you would think, like, of all of us, yes, we're all surprised that we're not hearing more about this from the mainstream media. Not really, but we are, right?
Right.
But Sweden might be one of those places where they'd say, hey, this would affect us, right? We've been here before. Let's not do this again.
Yeah. So thank you
if
for.
you want to see a very accurate accounting of that, watch the show Chernobyl on HBO. It is excellent, and they followed the timeline exactly, and it shows you how that all played out, and it's amazing to see how it played out and how, like, to this day there's still, you know, things there that are not good. But watch that show; it's excellent.
I don't think I will watch that show.
I watched the first show. I watched the first episode, loved it, and then something else came up and we were busy with something. I want to go back and rewatch that and start from the beginning.
We have a joke in our house that I won't watch anything that's like got disturbing images, but I'll read the most fucked up books. Like I'll read it in a book and it's worse, but I just won't watch it.
I'm like, what are you reading?
So-
She's like, I'm reading about the genocide in this. I'm like, what?
You're
But
like,
you won't
why?
watch. You won't watch the show.
I won't
about
watch it.
Like,
There's something like in the, you know, if it's like, oh, people's, you know, nails are peeling off or something, I'm like, nope, can't watch that. But I'll read about it in a book and really get even deeper into the depression. So anyway, that's all, not to say that I don't absolutely value your recommendations, David, but I probably won't watch that.
Don't watch the new Winnie the Pooh movie that's being
Absolutely, I will not.
The Winnie the Pooh horror movie that's gone viral today. All right, let's talk about this. Oil deaths. This is a bizarre story. Okay, something very strange is happening inside of Russia over the past few months that demands our attention tonight on this show. Something mysterious is happening to Russia's oil officials and oil tycoons and oil oligarchs and energy as well, and energy tycoons. They keep dying suddenly and unexpectedly. Yes, you heard me right. They keep dying off. These people in charge of Russia's oil and energy sector and the very infrastructure that this country relies on are dying mysteriously. Here's the BBC headline this morning. Look at this. Russian oil chief Maganov dies in a fall from a hospital window. There he is on the right, next to Vladimir Putin. That's not a doctored photo because I'll tell you why in a moment. Now, the report says the chairman of Russia's Lukoil giant, there he is in the picture, Ravil Maganov, has died after falling from a 6th floor hospital window in Moscow, reports say. And then, of course, I saw a separate video confirmation of the body there, so we're not going to show that here on the show. The company confirmed his death, but only said that Maganov had passed away following a severe illness. Yeah, a severe illness of being thrown out of a window. What kind of an illness is that? Russian media said he was being treated in Moscow's Central Clinic Hospital and died of his injuries. Now, okay, that's odd on its own, but it's even more bizarre when you realize that he's not alone in dying recently, right?
Yes. So there's been a string of these happening.
Yeah. So the report goes on that Maganov is the latest of a number of high-profile business executives to die in mysterious circumstances. Investigating authorities said they're working at the scene to establish how he died. Hey, there's a window up there. It's open.
And
he's down here.
Out of it.
Right.
Yeah.
He's not in that window anymore. He's dead here on the street outside of the window where he just was in the hospital. So shortly after Russia invaded Ukraine, Lukoil board called for the conflict to end as soon as possible, expressing sympathy for victims of this tragedy. Now, its billionaire president, Vagit Alekperov, resigned in April after the UK imposed sanctions on him in response to the invasion. So he then resigned. Several Russian energy oligarchs have also died in unusual circumstances in recent months. For instance, Sergei Protosenia. He's the body of the millionaire Novatech former manager Sergei Protosenia was found alongside of his wife and daughter at a Spanish villa back in April. His whole family. What? Okay. So there you go. That's another one.
Yes.
That happened in April. Then, okay, maybe that's odd again, but now when you add it to another one, here's Vladislav Ivyev, I don't know if I'm saying this correctly, Aviev, former vice president of Gazprom Bank. Aviev was found dead with his wife and daughter in their Moscow flat in April. What the hell is going on? Then in May, former Luke Oil tycoon Alexander Subotin died of sudden heart failure. He was 44. Suddenly just poof, gone. What the hell is going on here?
Well, the heart failure one is less strange, but when you add them all together, right?
When you add 7 of these guys,
yes,
and their families,
right,
and one of them's just now mysteriously fallen out of a window at 67 years old.
Yeah.
What the hell is going on? Where is the Western media coverage on this? I mean, the Western media coverage on this is that Maganov today criticized Russian invasion of Ukraine and called for a quick resolution to war. So therefore, the Western media line this morning was that Maganov clearly was evidence that Putin had him and these other people killed, right? That's what the Western media will tell you, Sky News, BBC, etc. Like, okay, clearly this was a Putin hit on these guys. While other reports are that these energy giants are actually friends of Putin and that they are being targeted for assassinations by Western governments, Western intelligence operations. I'm going to throw that out to you guys in the chat room. Do you think that these 7 energy giants in Russia responsible for the infrastructure of Russia's energy are being killed off by Putin or Western governments? Those are 2 options. Can you give me a third? Do either of those ring true to you?
They're all really unlucky.
Yeah, they just their whole families just happen to be unlucky. They all happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, a lot of them. I mean, picture this. This is Putin giving Maganov an award recently for a lifetime achievement in Russia, chosen by Putin for this award. So you think he has him thrown out of a window?
I don't know. And when you juxtapose this with the story last week of one of Putin's allies who had his daughter accidentally blown up in his car, right? And so you see these sort of targeted people in and around Putin's
Wait, say that again. Did I hear
the
you
man?
correct?
The man who
Alexander Dugina?
Yes, yes.
You think he had his daughter accidentally?
No, I'm talking.
If I misheard you, I was like, what?
The man last week that we spoke about, who the Western media said was Putin's best friend, it turns out they weren't actually
not at all
in person. Right.
Yeah.
Acquaintances.
Putin's brain, they called him. Putin's brain.
Yeah.
Rasputin.
They were not even. Anyway.
And and that was targeting him.
It was targeting him, but his daughter became the accidental victim of it. Right.
And not even accidental, because now we know, we talked about this, David, on the show too, which is like that this remote detonator that was being used was a proximity detonator. It had to be very close.
Oh,
and they were tracking, and they knew that he was not in the car, that she was.
Right.
And therefore they were tracking her, and they knew they just made the call to, well, we'll kill his daughter then.
Yeah.
Then she was a well-liked journalist in Russia. So all of these people. So again, you have to wonder who's taking these people out. It's really, really scary.
Yes, it is.
All right, let's talk about these biological weapons labs in Ukraine. Now, remember in the spring, we learned that the United States was funding and operating biological research laboratories in Ukraine. We've been waiting for updates on this story. I certainly have. The Western media was quick to denounce it, call it Russian propaganda. Then it was, of course, figured out it was actually true. We covered it here on our show. Our good friend Tucker Carlson also covered it on his show. He got blasted for covering it. Remember that? And good for him for covering it. It was called Russian disinformation, right? And even the Russians called it out and said, yes, there are biological weapons laboratories in Ukraine. We've known about this for years. They're there. In fact, the United States State Department released this document in response. I'm going to read you what it says. This is Ned Price from the U.S. State Department. It was dated March 9th. So I'm going to read it to you here. The Kremlin's allegations of chemical and biological weapons laboratories in Ukraine. The Kremlin is intentionally spreading outright lies that the United States and Ukraine are conducting chemical and biological weapons activities in Ukraine. We also have seen the People's Republic of China officials echo these conspiracy theories. The Russian disinformation is total nonsense and not the first time that Russia has invented such false claims against another country. Also, these claims have been debunked conclusively and repeatedly over many years, he says. Okay. He says, as we've said all along, Russia is inventing false pretexts in an attempt to justify its own horrific actions in Ukraine. The United States does not own or operate, key words here, does not own or operate any chemical or biological laboratories in Ukraine. It is in full compliance with its obligations under the Chemical Weapons Convention and Biological Weapons Convention. And it does not develop or possess such weapons anywhere. It's Russia that has active chemical and biological weapons programs and is in violation of the chemical warfare laws. Okay? Weapons Convention, the Biological Weapons Convention. And then, of course, this happened. Watch.
I only have a minute left. Let me ask you, does Ukraine have chemical or biological weapons?
Ukraine has biological research facilities, which, in fact, we are now quite concerned Russian forces may be seeking to gain control of. So we are working with the Ukrainians on how they can prevent any of those research materials from falling into the hands of Russian forces should they approach.
I'm sure you're...
Oh, okay. So, well, that answered it, right? So they do have these facilities. What? Okay, so you were lying to us then, right? Okay, so there are labs, but there are no bioweapons labs. They're just research facilities, right? Okay, we were waiting for the other shoe to drop in this story. I know I was. And it just did. New documents have just surfaced showing that Ned Price at the State Department was not just being coy, he was lying to the American people. So let's put some of these newly leaked documents up on the screen here. These are Ukrainian weapons documents that confirm the military and biological activities of the Pentagon on the territory of Ukraine. Newly leaked documents have surfaced that show on August 29th, 2005, a division of the U.S. Department of Defense, which is called the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, signed an agreement with a corporation called Black and Veatch. Have you ever heard of this? Black and Veatch? It's kind of an unfortunate name for a company. Out of Kansas, and they're in the United States, in Kansas. The contract, the agreement was to implement the Biological Threat Reduction Project in Ukraine. Now, according to the War on Leaks that broke this, the company was to build and did build a central diagnostic reference lab for especially dangerous infections near the city of Kharkiv. This facility was to conduct research on pathogens as well as create vaccines. A total of $173 million was allocated for the project. What's interesting and not surprising, of course, is that the United States contracts with private companies, right? So you taxpayers will pay for bioweapons being developed in Ukraine, but the United States State Department, Ned Price, gets to say that we don't own them. Convenient, right? Like, we don't own them,
right? Nor
do we actually operate them, because we're just funding private companies to do it, right? It's the same way we get away with all sorts of shit, like in Iraq with private contractors, right? It's
kind of like a franchise. It's like, that's the franchise, and we supply all the goods and all that, and we get a percentage of the profits or whatever, but we don't own it. Somebody else does.
Yeah. So we learned from these documents that these American private companies are doing the heavy lifting on all of this. And so this Black and Veatch company, the largest engineering firm in Kansas, has contracted with the Department of Defense for these biological threat laboratories in Ukraine. Don't take my word for it. It's literally right on their website. Here it is, Black and Veatch, and they have a whole section right on these particular projects in Ukraine. Here's what Black and Veatch's own website says about this biological threat project. The Defense Threat Reduction Agency competitively awarded us, the Special Projects Corporation, one of its biological threat reduction integrating contracts in 2008. The 5-year contract, which has then been renewed, has a collective ceiling of $4 billion among the 5 selected contractors. And they're in Ukraine in 2008, a vital part of the cooperative biological threat reduction.
Okay. I mean, they're trying to reduce those things. They're certainly not producing They're just like deconstructing it, right?
Right.
Like
So
a
that's
Caesar salad.
So that's the joke, right? Is that they're working on and creating these things, and then they remove them from the labs to test them in airborne conditions, right? So we're going to try these things to see if these would actually hurt people. So then we're going to like release them in quarters or out, lighter versions of it, is according to the reading that I've done on it, like lighter versions of it, to see how it'll interact with human and animal testing and so forth, and see how it interacts with these things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and go back to the first page, the front page of that article.
Which
that
article?
Website.
Yeah, their website.
The website.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. If you go to back to the home page, look at the top under the name. It says 100% employee owned.
Right. And they say that everywhere on their website. They really want you to know that, like, no, there's no U.S. government owning any of this, but they're funding all of it. So they're not.
So is it like a
by
bioweapons? It's like a bioweapons co-op. What the hell is that?
You can
That
bring
doesn't sound safe.
You can bring your honey and your different things that you make, your beeswax lipstick, and you can sell it at the Black and VH co-op. And also sell your bat coronavirus there while you've got it too. So you'll recall, maybe you don't recall, I didn't, and I've forgotten about this. This same Black and VH, B&V. Where have we seen that before? Where have we seen B&V? Oh, I remember. In Hunter Biden's emails in his laptop.
No, get the heck out of here.
Look at the very bottom of your screen right here.
Too much.
Look at the bottom of your screen.
I can't read that.
Well, if you zoom in on it, and I don't have a copy on my laptop, otherwise I'd zoom in on it. But you can clearly read all of the different projects in Ukraine, Burisma, everything else. But of course, there at the bottom where it says, I'm going to look at it. It
I
says
can read it. The principal contractor, M&V, seems to be also the party that operates in Ukraine on the similar or same projects.
B&V.
There's no competition here, question mark?
Meaning like there's no competition because we got these contracts. There's no competition for B&V.
But it says here on their website that they were competitively awarded. It specifically tells us that they were bidding because that's big scandal.
You have to do it. You have to have competitive
right. So
bidding
they're
in government
asking,
contracts.
is there no competition here? Right? Saying, okay, interesting.
There you go.
Can't put that one all the way
Some
together.
new documents for you to mull over on your Friday and into your weekend.
All right, that was a lot.
They should have been Mueller overed.
Yeah.
I like that. We've got more news to get to here on the show. We're going to talk about this Uyghur controversy in China, the United Nations releasing their Uyghur report. This, of course, is a big pile of propaganda. We're going to go through that. We're also going to look at vaccine mandates for the FAA and how that's been affecting pilots. We're going to hear from some whistleblowers on that issue. We'll see if the mainstream media covers that story. And we're going to look at the energy crisis in Germany because President Putin predicted this a couple of years ago. It's all coming true. And the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab are in for a whooping, an ass whooping.
Okay.
We'll get to all of that and more, but you want to tell us now about China?
Yes, I do. All right. The United States, no, scratch that. Let me try it again. The United Nations has published a long-anticipated report about China and its alleged persecution of the Uyghur population. Now, Western nations are waving this report around gleefully, saying, see, this is damning. We told you China was doing all these bad things, right? China, on the other hand, about the report says this. This is their response today. This assessment is a patchwork of false information that serves as political tools for the U.S. and other Western countries to strategically use Xinjiang to contain China. This is from the Foreign Ministry spokesperson. It again shows that the UN Human Rights Office has been reduced to an enforcer and accomplice of the U.S. and other Western countries. So China's saying, this is total crap. This is proof that the UN is in lockstep with Western nations. So let's go through it. Let's see what the United Nations actually says. Because, of course, most of us know, right, or have heard that, oh, China is persecuting the Uyghurs. We've heard words like genocide. We've heard words like forced sterilization. We've heard words like human rights abuse, forced labor camps, all of those things, right? So does the UN actually accuse China of these things? And did they actually observe this? The answer to that is no. They actually did not see any of these things, and they say so in their report. Now, I'm not going to say that these things do or do not happen. I've not seen it with my own eyes, right? I've seen many conflicting reports. I'm going to tell you what the United Nations actually says in this 41-page report, and you can sort of deduce for yourself, because they're saying, oh, read this report. This is clear human rights, one of the biggest human rights violations of all civilization, basically. But then when you read it, you're like, what? This is not a genocide. But that's not to say there's not maybe some racism or abuse there. So let's see what it is. Now, they tell us what their methods were, right? They say basically, in parallel, and further to its global mandate and under the General Assembly, blah, 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 what they did to write this report was continue to monitor the situation and assess the allegations by reviewing and critically analyzing publicly available official documentation. Okay, I could have done that, as well as research material, satellite imagery, and other open source information, examining their origin, credibility, weight, and reliability in line with the United Nations methodology.
So basically, we didn't leave our house. We just went to the internet and we just read a bunch of shit.
So, okay, so you did a content analysis. Valid, but then beyond that, right? Because you're the United Nations, you can't just use that. I also could write a report like that. They say by way of supplement to this extensive body of documentation, they also conducted 40 in-depth interviews, right, with individuals with direct and firsthand knowledge of this situation. 26 of these interviews had of these people had either been detained. They stated that they'd either been detained or had worked at various facilities, right? In each case, the United Nations assessed the reliability and credibility of these people, right? And so but most of these interviews were done remotely for COVID and or security reasons. Okay.
So they didn't go there. They just interviewed them via Zoom.
Well, okay. They did go there, but so here is the last part of their methodology says that they tried to get the High Commissioner to visit China in 2018, but then the pandemic happened in 2020. So what happened in those 2 years, I'm not quite sure.
Yeah.
And then the visit was postponed until March of 2022. They finally, sort of got their books out and were able to make it happen. And she did actually go in April and May of 2022. So it mentions a few times the High Commissioner who did go to China, Michelle Bachelet, but nowhere in this report are her firsthand accounts. I read it, and it doesn't say this is happening and she saw it, right? Or she said this or anything like that. And in fact, when she got back from this trip, she never said anything about human rights abuse, which is weird, right? In fact, the report reads very much like a copy and paste of what the West accuses China. And then some of their analysis, yeah, that probably happens. And we have some corroborating evidence.
So did she pull, I'm curious, I didn't go through the methodology and see what some of the sourcing was on this UN report, because I know you were diving deep into it. But we have these big reports from the BBC, which have been discredited, right? Total propaganda, right?
Yeah.
The Associated Press, again, total propaganda, these articles.
Well, the Associated Press has recently gone there and said, we do not see any evidence of these camps. The Associated Press has even said,
oh yeah, they came out with their most recent, and they said, yes. In fact, we see we see education. They're doing pretty well.
So we're going to talk about what that was. Now, again, I want to be sensitive because some of these people interviewed maybe did have some awful experience. This is not all to say that China is blameless, but let's take a measured look at what are the allegations and what does the United Nations say. Now, first regarding indoctrination. The narrative is that China is taking the Uyghurs, a Muslim population, and forcing them to stop practicing their religion and their culture. They say that they are reprogramming them into Chinese ways with their labor camps. So what are the labor camps? These are what are known as VETCs, or Vocational Educational Training in Xinjiang. These were born out of China's hard strike program. This is China's solution to terrorism, which the UN admits China has had. The U.S., you may know, also had problems with terrorists. What did they do? They used their military to bomb countries where they thought the terrorists were from. China, on the other hand, decided to fight extremism with education and rehabilitation, and this is what came of that, is these VETC camps.
So that's an interesting, that's a really interesting tale of two different ways of dealing with terrorism, right? Because the idea is if you kill a terrorist, you're martyring these terrorists, and you kill one, you slice the head off of Al-Qaeda, then guess what pops up? Another or more. It's a hydra. You create more of them, right? You radicalize families. By killing civilians, you radicalize, right? Or you could maybe take this strategy, which is instead of doing that, okay, let's have an education program that not honestly forces you, but really pushes you to learn maybe the error of your ways.
Well, it doesn't force you. That's the thing, right? So look at this screen here has the conditions under which someone gets into a VETC camp. It says there are 3 categories in which these people are put in VETC camps. Let's see. And I know that this is text dense. I just want to make sure that you have it for yourself. The first is individuals who have been convicted of terrorist or extremist crimes, right? The second are people who have been incited, coerced, or induced into participating in terrorist or extremist activities. And the third is people who were incited, coerced, or induced into participating in terrorist or extremist activities, or people who participated in terrorist or extremist activities that posed a real danger but did not actually cause harm. So they're trying to find these people who are being indoctrinated into maybe terrorist organizations. Now, the United Nations takes issue with the way that terrorism is defined because they say, well, you don't define it it's too broad, and so people could just be practicing some social protest and be accused of terrorism. So they say some people might get caught in a dragnet when they're really not terrorists. They're just sort of normal social protesters. That's one thing, right? Now, these people who get into these VETC camps are supposed to have a choice to not go there. And the United Nations says that a lot of people here, they didn't realize they didn't have to go. If you look at this screen, they say that, they were forced into them. None of the interviewees felt that they could challenge the referral process. So they were referred to a camp and they didn't feel like they could say no. None had access to a lawyer prior to being sent there. Several underwent long interrogations, and they said once they were there, they couldn't leave, right? And then when they were there, the UN is saying that China put those people there for various reasons and references this Karakoff List, which they say appeared online. And they use this phrase. They said, it's likely authentic. That doesn't inspire confidence, right? You're the United Nations. You're supposed to be doing a report. So why don't you go figure out if it's authentic? But again, the UN went there. They worked with the Chinese government. Why didn't they ask about the Karakoff List? Now, this is a list, if you look on this screen, which is a document that has a whole list of reasons that people might have been put into the VETC camps. Reasons include having too many children, being an unsafe person, being born in certain years, being an ex-convict, wearing a veil or a beard, having applied for a passport and not left the country, and so on. So this is a list. Obviously, China is saying the people in these camps have done things that really cause a threat to society. And this list says, well, some people are there for reasons that do not qualify, right? They also say, the United Nations says that the Uyghur population is overrepresented in these camps, and that's a bad sign. See here, it says based on the methodology employed. Now they don't have any counts of who was there. They don't know this. They're just basing this on methodology. They estimate that around 10 to 20% of the adult ethnic population in these countries and townships were subjected to some form of detention between 2017 and 2018. So 10 to 20% of the Uyghur population had been in a camp, which may or may not be proportional to the terrorism threats that China was experiencing, which the United Nations does admit. Look at number 13. Look at this laundry list of terrorist events that prompted China to start the hard strike program, right? Since 2014, 1,588 violent and terrorist gangs, arrested 12,995, seized 2,052 explosive devices. Like, this is a lot, right? So obviously a government's going to say, we got to do something about this. Also, interesting, though, this made me think, if the United Nations really thinks it's a problem that one population is overrepresented in detention centers, what's it going to say about American prisons, I wonder, which are overrepresented by Black people, but only make up 14% of the American population, but over 40, by some estimates, 40 to 60% of American prisons.
We're not going to see a United Nations report on American human rights abuses.
No, but they're all in on these VETC camps, right? Now, the UN report the VETC camps are almost half of the 41 pages. And the interviewees reported, being beaten up. Here's a list of some of the things they say that happened to them. They were put in these tiger chairs. I had to Google it and I found this image. A tiger chair is when you're like strapped in like that, and then you get beaten by a baton, subject to interrogation, water poured in their faces, prolonged solitary confinement, being forced to sit motionless on small stools. So I'm not saying any of this is great, right? It's not. Is this how you are to treat terrorists or rehabilitate people? Obviously, this is not a desirable way to treat any population, right? But given that these are such a big deal in the UN report, these VETC camps, you would think the UN would say, we need to see one, right? We need to see for ourselves. They did not. Instead, they said this. The government, which they're talking about China, has indicated that VETC facilities are now closed and that all trainees have graduated, thereby suggesting that these facilities may no longer be in use. The UN is not in a position to confirm this. What? Like, you're writing this report, half is it about these camps, but you're saying they may be closed, we're not sure. So what did the High Commissioner even do on her trip? Did she just take classes in how to use a wok? Like, what is this, right? I'm not saying these things were not bad. I don't know. And clearly the United Nations doesn't either, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I would love to go to this region. In fact, something we've been talking about. I mean, I would love to go and see for myself. You had a population where they experienced terrorism, right? I mean, that's well documented.
Right.
So is the solution then from the United Nations to follow the U.S. model, maybe just to bomb that part of your country? Like, maybe that would have been the better solution.
Yeah. Okay, so that's about the camps. Now let's talk about forced sterilization. This narrative has to do with the one China policy. You may know that until 2014, Chinese families were limited to only having one child. The Uyghurs were actually exempted from that even before 2014. They could, here was the change in 2016. Ethnic minorities such as the Uyghurs were allowed to have more than one child, meaning that Uyghurs could have 2 children, urban couples, and that rural ones could have 3. So then this is saying that in 2017, China amended this policy to permit people of all ethnic groups to have 2 children in the city and 3 children in the country. So this is where reports of forced sterilization come in. So keep in mind that the Uyghurs were always exempted from the one China policy. They could always have more children because it was a part of their religious belief. And then these are where the reports come in of several women raising allegations of forced birth control, forced IUD, and possible forced sterilization. Now, the United Nations goes on, number 113, to say that this is likely due to enforcement of the family planning policy. So now that everyone was given the equal rights to have kids, this is where this came in. That's not to say it's good, right? Nobody should force you on any contraception, but this is where they think this is. Okay, what about cultural attacks? Well, the UN says that mosques have been removed. How do they know? They looked at Google Images, right? So they give us this first Google Images of the Imam Asim Shrine, which they say, look, it was there in 2012, right? And then they give us another one saying, look, it was disappearing in 2017 and then all but gone in 2020. Again, they went there. They should ask questions. Where did it go? China says that these buildings were old and these were removed for whatever reason. I tried to find accounts from the Muslim community why this specific mosque was removed and didn't find any. So if any of our viewers know why, maybe you can give us more information than the United Nations found on their own.
It totally looks Photoshopped because it's like all that stuff is gone, but like the wind wouldn't have blown over all of those spots where stuff was. It's like, I don't know. I just find that kind of weird.
Well, also just think about like China's China's relationship with Google. So you're going to rely on Google Images,
right? Yeah, good point.
For your data. Like, come on, you can't go there. Like you're the United Nations. What else do you have to do? This is a major story, right? The whole reason like we're putting in sanctions and trade sanctions and all of this stuff is because of the Uyghur genocide. Like if that's the reason, go there and disprove it or prove it one way or the other.
Yeah.
Instead, you go on Google.
Yeah, because basically in that photo, you're saying there's never been any rain there since it's gone. There's never been any wind. There's never been anything to even cover up a little piece of that stuff that was showing because it looks like somebody just took an eraser in Photoshop and erased it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does look like that.
Okay, so what about forced labor? That's another thing we hear about, right? Well, the United Nations found that these VETC camps had vocational training. And they also found that, this is a quote, many of the trainees who've completed their studies in educational and training centers have gone on to find employment in factories or enterprises. That's forced labor, you guys. You train someone for a job, and then they go take a job in that field, right? Is that forced labor? According to the UN, it is, right? It says number 121, like the close link between the labor schemes and this counter extremism framework means that these people are pushed into these vocations that maybe they don't want to be, right? I mean, what they wanted to be was presumably terrorists, and then we trained them to be like printers, and then they became printers, and that's forced labor. It's like if a prisoner in America is trained in the laundry and then takes a civilian job in the laundry, forced labor.
Yeah, like
right?
we still have children in Guantanamo Bay that we rounded up. Like 15 years, like they're still in Gitmo.
Right.
Like they're still in prisons. Like what kind of rehabilitation are we doing of these terrorists that maybe weren't even terrorists? They were the children of terrorists.
Right. About the detention facilities, right? Again, the United Nations goes to Google Images. Can we go forward 2 slides? They say, well, look at these buildings. These were detention facilities in 2018. It's on the left of your screen. And then on 2020, a lot more buildings there, right?
Thanks, Google Earth.
Again, that's what 10th graders do is they Google it. They did not ask. They do not go there. Nothing in this report is from firsthand seeing, right? And then finally, the thing that we were told is that they survey them, right? Too much surveillance of their communications. The United Nations does say that, using this counterterrorism law, they technologically investigate measures. They even go as far as to talk to the ISP. They can get their WhatsApp chats, their Snapchats, all of that stuff, right? And so they're saying this is a violation. I just wonder, have they met the CIA?
Have they met maybe they got their tools from the NSA,
right?
The American NSA for spying on Americans. Yeah, I know there's just a cynical nature in me, but like I love the holier than thou sanctimonious attitude of the United Nations.
Right.
Not even going there and issuing this report.
So interestingly, the United Nations takes the opportunity to sum all this up with some business advice, which makes me all the more suspicious that the UN is motivated by Western interests to release a report like this. They're like, well, China should stop this, and they should stop this, then they should stop this. And then we all can look at this, take possible measures to meet responsibility to respect human rights, in your business relationships. So like, try not to do business with people you think might be involved in this. Like, is that what the United Nations should be doing? Woke capitalism? Right?
Right.
Okay, so now all of this speaks to why, we played you the clip recently, why Roger Waters of Pink Floyd had recently said on CNN that, China is not guilty of human rights abuse. Let's watch him say it for himself.
You can't have a conversation about human rights and you can't have a conversation about Taiwan without actually doing the reading.
Roger, if you're having a conversation about human rights, at the top of the list of offenders are the Chinese. Why is it always the Western world?
At the top of your list.
Why is it
the
always
Chinese
the Western
didn't
world?
invade Iraq and kill 1 million people in 2003. In fact, as far as I can recall, hang on a minute, who have the Chinese invaded and murdered, slaughtered?
Their own.
Bollocks.
Okay.
That's absolute nonsense.
All right. So am I saying that the Uyghurs are not victims of racism and possible abuse in China? No, I'm not saying that. I have not been there. I don't know. But based on this report, clearly neither does the United Nations.
Right. All right. And then listen to other journalists who have been covering this and who say, have been debunking these BBC reports and these others. And they'll get their hands on this UN report soon enough to debunk.
It's just very confounding considering how you've seen it splashed all over Western media. Like, look, the United Nations is condemning China, right? Without even reading it. We had a super chat from Salty Ball or something said, serious question, are you guys communists? And the serious answer is no, we're not. Nope. But we also are we are truth seekers here on this show. So we don't play favorites. So if it did find out and we actually had confirmation that there was widespread genocide, we'd be covering it as we do when there are genocides that we cover. But we also don't stand for propaganda and media propaganda. So we've got more news to get to here on the show on this Thursday. Coming up, we're going to talk about the flu vaccine, the vaccine mandates for the FAA pilots who were forced to get those vaccines, speaking out, whistleblowers coming forward to tell you about their problems with that and whether or not they should ever fly again. We're also going to look at Germany's energy crisis in a moment. But first, I want to tell you about the 3-week rule, which may be the best financial advice ever. What is the 3-week rule? Well, wait 3 weeks to buy that new car. Wait 3 weeks to refinance your home mortgage. Wait 3 weeks to finance any major purchase. Why 3 weeks? Because that's how fast the average ScoreMaster user takes to boost his or her credit rating, an average of 61 points. And listen to this, 61 points added to your credit score can save you tens of thousands of dollars on everything that you finance, from a car to your mortgage, on and on and on the list goes. ScoreMaster technology was developed by credit data scientists to boost your credit score higher and faster than you thought possible. ScoreMaster is so easy, it takes about a minute to get started, and you don't have to wait months for your best credit score. How many points can you add to your credit score? Find out right now. Go and check it out. Be sure to visit scoremaster.com/redacted for a special 7-day trial that we have for you. Just go there and you get a whole bunch of free stuff just for trying in that 7-day trial. Go do it. Add 61 points to your credit score. David, I think you said you got, over 80 points added to your credit score by using them?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Over 80 points.
It saved me a ton of interest on my car loan.
Excellent.
Awesome. So there you heard it here. First-hand experience. That's scoremaster.com/redacted. Again, scoremaster.com/redacted. Thanks to all of you. Are we almost at 1 million subscribers? We're zeroing in on
996,155.
So 3,800, 900 or so. All right. Maybe we can do it by the end of the show. So.
Well, thank you if you have subscribed. We really appreciate it if you're new here. And we had at one point close to 19,000 viewers. So if you would please hit the like button and we'll get more like-minded people and we can talk more about China. We're not going to now. We're going to talk now about vaccine mandates because on Thursday, a group of whistleblowers had a meeting to discuss health violations from the FAA or the Federal Aviation Administration. You know, the people that are flying you in airplanes when you travel. This meeting was put on by a group of advocates for them. They're called the U.S. Freedom Flyers, and they speak on behalf of people who work in aviation.
Yeah, so they had a big Zoom meeting. I mean, look at all the people who were in attendance in this Zoom meeting. There were a lot of people, whistleblowers, doctors, soldiers, pilots. The meeting featured a whistleblower, Senior Aviation Inspector McGray, Bruce McGray. He's a safety inspector at the FAA. He's leading the charge right now of people in the industry who are concerned with the way the FAA dealt with this pandemic. COVID and COVID vaccines overall. And this is one of the many cases we've been discussing it here on the show in which companies are facing litigation over these vaccine mandates, right? So,
yeah,
I mean, we're going to hear it from like Tyson Chicken and a whole bunch of other companies who are facing these vaccine mandate litigation right now.
Yes, but it's especially scary inside aviation because these pilots are saying we have been what they're calling vaccine injured, right? So they had some adverse reactions to taking something that was mandated for their field to keep their job. And if they are now continuously sick, well, that's an issue. One of the things that Inspector McGray points out is that the FAA has a policy currently still and always has had that no pilot may take a drug until it's been 1 year since full FDA approval.
What?
This makes sense, right? Obviously, who here, raise your hand if you want your pilot on something experimental, right? In case, right? I don't. I'm like this.
Alcohol is not experimental at all, and they don't let them drink.
And they're not allowed to drink, right? And they even have like,
sleeping.
You know, very strenuous sleep logs about all of that stuff, right? Now, again, this is the FDA's policy that no pilot may take a drug until it's been 1 year since full FDA approval.
This is the FAA. So let's not get our initialisms, or what is it? Initialism acronym mixed up.
An acronym is something you can pronounce as a word, like NASA.
Okay.
And an initialism is something that's not a word. So FAA is an initialism because we don't say FA.
Okay. So
unless we start, do you want to?
No. So the FAA has a policy that no pilot may take a drug until it's been 1 year since the full FDA approval of said drug.
And if they do, according to Inspector McGray, they don't get medical approval to fly. Now, despite this rule, the government used a blanket waiver for the COVID-19 vaccines without any documentary evidence and scientific studies. So this is an important question, right? Why was this vaccine given a pass when no other medication ever has? Clearly, it was not based on documentary evidence or scientific studies. We know exactly what started to be presented when human trials started, right? And so why? Why this political curveball?
And why wasn't Washington listening to this at all? Todd Callender is an attorney. He was on this call, the Zoom call. He kind of led it off, kicked off everything, kind of explaining how they tried to take this to Washington, to senators' offices. The only senator's office that even responded was Senator Ron Johnson's office. Nobody else got back to him. Listen to what Todd Callender has to say.
So we ran into deaf ears at the FAA. The Inspector General came back and effectively said, there's nothing to see here. We're not going to investigate anything. So we're going to take things into our own hands. That's what this is about. We're all here together because we know that we're not going to get any help out of Washington. In fact, this is a global problem, folks. This is every government in the world doing the exact same thing. We're not going to get any help from any of our governments. This was planned over at least 40 years, at least from a legal perspective. It is a
wow. And so I see people in our chat saying, wow, we're in the UK. We haven't heard anything about this. Imagine that. So when will you start hearing about pilots in the UK? When will you start hearing about these adverse effects? When will you start hearing about, questions as to whether or not they should be flying at all because of being injured? Right.
Right.
Well, and that just shows you the influence of the FDA or of the pharmaceutical industry, because they even got the FDA to agree to block that trial data from being circulated for 75 years. The FDA was going to do that for the pharmaceutical industry. So this is 100% the influence of the pharmaceutical industry.
Yeah.
Right.
You're right.
Well, but the FAA, according to this call, had concerns about the COVID vaccine as early as October of 2020. So this screen was shown during the call. It was from an FDA internal audit presentation, and it lists what the FAA was concerned about if and when these vaccines would start to be implemented. Now, it's interesting because it reads like a laundry list of what actually happened, right? Of what was actually happening in clinical trials.
Stroke, Guillain-Barré syndrome.
Especially from the Pfizer documentations that we've read to you here. Yes, right? Preemptively, the FAA was concerned about myocarditis.
So the FAA was concerned about these vaccines and this list, myocarditis, and troubling because you're sitting for long periods of time. If you're a pilot too, like thrombosis, and also blood clots, right? These are troubles when you're flying for long periods of time and sitting for long periods of time.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And, inflammation is something that exacerbated when one flies. So you would think that people who work in the air would have a reason to be concerned about anything that would make their time in the air worse, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and we think about like inflammation, right? So like myocarditis as an inflammation. We were talking about this before the show. When you get on an airplane, you get like, you get chubby, right? You get fat, right? You feel
you get bloated.
You get bloated. You retain water. That's why,
that's why you get kind of farty and burpy.
No, you dehydrate quickly. That's why they give out water, right? So there's all sorts of weird stuff that happens to your body. So there's already like an inflammation happening to your body when you're flying anyway.
Yeah.
So you would think that they should be more concerned about some of these things that are layered on top of your already sort of bloaty, farty flying body, right?
Yeah. Farty and burpy.
That's my medical opinion.
Okay. Thank you for that. Now, Inspector McGray further said that the FAA covered up vaccine mandate protests. For example, in Jacksonville, at the time the media was reporting these walkouts from air traffic controllers, people who were walking out over the mandate, right? And it shows here that the FAA took to Twitter and said, no, these are not, this is just normal, nothing to see here, traffic, staffing shortages.
It was just delays and weather, right? They said widespread weather, severe weather.
Yes. So if you look at their report on their reply on Twitter, do we have that?
Oh, do we?
There we go. This is from just around those same time, October of 2021. Nothing to see here. Totally fine.
Severe weather.
Traffic shortages. Nothing.
I mean, could you have looked this up on a weather app?
Sure. And weather is almost inconsequential because, you can always say there's pressure or.
Right. There's a little cloud. There's something.
And,
there's a storm front coming.
What do you know
it's
about
a weather
pressure?
balloon.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a nut loose on the wing.
Yeah.
There's a nut loose on the tarmac running around. We have to capture this guy. So Lieutenant Colonel Pete Chambers, he's a doctor who holds the rank of Lieutenant Colonel in the National Guard, was himself injured during COVID. Well, you can figure out why. He saw other members of the military also injured as well. He was on this call. He says, we are at a pivotal moment right now in our history. Listen to what he said.
What I'm going to talk a little bit about today is where we're at. And where we're at right now on the 30th of August, 2022, is we're in the midst of discussing something that's a line of effort. That's something that represents a clear and present danger to humanity. Okay, this is just a line of effort. This is only one. There are others out there. And it's not only humanity, but we bring it down to the tactical level now, and it's our loved ones we put on planes. It's these pilots that are in the air.
Yeah. So think about that, right? What a conundrum. What a conundrum. And we should point out some of the great reporting on this. I wanted to pull up her Substack if I can in a second, but just think about I'm going to pull up because I want to pull a quote from her reporting here. It's what a conundrum it is to be a pilot thinking, I can't come out with this. I can't talk to the FAA about this. And by the way, the FAA is well known, you do not speak out about things you've seen in the air. You don't talk about things that are problematic to the FAA. This is well known. Now, I interviewed President Obama's pilot, Air Force One pilot. Okay. And I can send you this. I'll put it in the description below. You can see my interview with him. And he said, we're not allowed to talk about UFOs. We've all seen them. We've had interactions with craft while we're flying. And I asked him, why don't you talk about these? Why are you now coming out about this? Why don't we hear more pilots who fly commercial airline? He goes, because you will lose your job. You will lose your job if you talk out about this stuff. And you're worried about losing your job. Where do you go? If you've been in the Air Force or you've been, a pilot in the military, right? Where do you go after the military? You go to commercial aviation, right? Well, if you lose that job, where then do you go? Where do you go? Start flying drug runs out of Guatemala? You know, like, what do you do if you don't then have the opportunity to be, you know, under the FAA's supervision and running commercial airlines, right?
Mm-hmm. So further, let's say, who is this next thought? I didn't see this one.
Oh, okay. This is, sorry, I was trying to pull up, I was hoping you would give me a break and take that while I pull up the...
Well, okay, a lot of the other things that are listed in this, that were spoken about in this whistleblower call, were things that we have all taken issue with. For instance, you know, why were vaccines given a pass for all sorts of, why were the vaccines that were given approval, why were we kept in the dark about clinical trials, why, you know, these are things that are not specific to aviation. They're specific to all of us.
So I wanted to call out the great journalism, and who put a lot of this work together is Etana Hecht. And I hope I'm saying your first name right, Etana. So you can read her Substack. I love the name of her Substack is Clown World. So writes journalists over at Substack. So go and support her work. We need to support independent journalists. So she writes this. She's been following this story, and she says, she says, where does the liability land? A multi-billion-dollar corporation created a product. That product got hyped within an environment of panic, fear-mongering, social pressure, media adoration, guilt, government pressure, and finally, financial pressure. So then here's the pilot part of this. I want to read this. A pilot succumbed to that pressure, got vaccinated, boosted per his company's coercion, and is now suffering from chest pains, neurological oddities. That pilot now faces an impossible choice. Report his medical issues and risk losing everything that he's worked for, or keep quiet, continue flying and pray. And if he reports his concerns, he'd be grounded for an undetermined amount of time and put on medical leave, during which time he'd receive a fraction of the salary that he got from flying.
So what he did was actually protect himself with whistleblowers laws and say, well, then I'm going to have to blow the top out of the whole industry, or else, because at least I'll be protected.
Right.
So, you know, thankfully we still have those with whistleblower laws to protect people like this who want to speak out.
So Josh Yoder is the co-founder of Freedom Flyers, says he hears from pilots all the time on these issues from vaccines, that they are afraid to speak out about it, and they are afraid to come forward because of the FAA. They've set up basically a way for people to come out and talk to them personally, and they're setting up an email to be able to contact them directly. Well, they'll take care of your private information, not share it publicly at all. So he says he hears from these guys all of the time. Listen.
I hear from hundreds of people literally every single day. My phone rings with someone who's vaccine injured, often within the airline industry, but not always. And I know that there's many people out there that are currently flying with vaccine injuries, specifically cardiac and neurological conditions. These are the things that I hear about the most.
Neurological conditions among your pilots.
So, I mean, this is a population that we obviously want in tip-top shape, right?
Right.
We absolutely all want to look into this, you know, and it has to not be taboo to say these things in order to do it. So let us know what you think of this story in the chat, and let us know if there's anything else that you want us to look at for other industries as well, because I think this is going to pop up, like we talked about last week, not just through civil litigation, not just through class actions, but also industry by industry. Is interesting.
One story we're going to work on. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, it did prompt a question for me. When you talk about the whistleblower protection, how did Snowden not get that? Do we know?
Well, because, I mean, again, if this is where the Espionage Act, when you fall under this, 1911 law, 1911 year law, the Espionage Act, and it's like this umbrella that it's convenient to sort of throw people under that, say that they violated, Julian Assange, Edward Snowden, that these are now enemies of the state because they revealed things that could harm the United States in the hands of our enemies. So under those, maybe it sort of gets rid of the.
I'm not acutely aware of what Snowden is
I was just
actually
curious.
Charged with, but
yeah. So let us know. But anyway, one of the stories I would like to work on for next week is something around the vaccines that has to do with some data that's just being published out of Singapore as it relates to infertility. So we'll have more on that in the newsletter. as the days unfold. Be sure to subscribe to our newsletter. If you go to redacted.inc, that's our newsletter. It's free. It's totally free when you go there. And let me just see if I can pull up the website here. What happens is when you sign up, you'll receive a welcome email from me at Clayton. Sorry, it's so hard for me to type on the fly like this. So if you go to redacted.inc and you click on sign up for our free newsletter, click subscribe, you will receive, there's the website, you'll receive a welcome email, and then you'll get the newsletter every day at 8 a.m. Eastern time, 7 a.m. Eastern time, roughly in that, right over your cup of coffee in the morning. And then you'll be more informed throughout the day. So we usually try to get that out first thing in the morning to you with a couple of stories that we're covering here on the show.
All right. You ready to move on? Do you need to stretch for a second? Hang on, let's see if my
Get up,
back
walk
pops.
a couple laps.
Did you hear that?
You can fill some space.
Oh, I got lots of things to say, but
just not on the show.
No, I have plenty of things to say on the show, but sometimes I bring something up and you're like, I get this look from Clayton. You know, I'm afraid to speak.
Don't be afraid.
I'm censored.
Don't be afraid.
She
is totally unredacted. She's totally unredacted. So, by the way, thank you to all of our subscribers. We're nearing 1 million subs. My much love to all of you for subscribing. Okay, let's talk about Germany. Let's talk about Germany now.
Just lost you guys for a second. I think you're back.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, you're back.
You're back now.
Okay.
Sorry, guys.
I was here, like when I hear either Philip or David going,
That's exactly
what I heard.
what David did.
It's like,
I was like, do you really not like this
David,
story?
camera really quick. Are they going to come back right away? Like
it's like what's his name? It's what's his name from the Christmas Story when he gets the soap put in his mouth, or he's like,
yeah. That's exactly
Ralphie. Yeah.
Did everyone else in the show hear David, or did we? Because you didn't stop streaming, right?
Yeah, no, I stayed.
They probably did.
So then you heard that weird
cut out. So what?
Oh, okay, that weird noise. That
it depends on. So what happens is, like when that first happens, I have to decide. Do I switch to my camera or switch to the be right back? Because sometimes it's like just a couple seconds and you're right back.
Yeah.
But I have to sit here and go, okay, should I switch? Should I stay?
So basically, Captain Sully Sullenberger, you are not. Do I turn it around, fly it back to JFK, or do I just land it in the Hudson? I've only got 1 second to make this decision. What do I do? Landed it in the Hudson. All right, we're back. All right. Well, something very big and something very bad is happening in Germany. And to put it another way, Deutschland hat ein großes Problem. German leaders have lost their grip on reality, and they are pushing this country, Germany, into economic collapse right before our eyes. Like, you're literally witnessing it unfold, and you can see how they did this step by step by step. With literally Angela Merkel over a glass of wine with her husband deciding to shut down the nuclear power plants in Germany. That's how it happened, folks. That's exactly how it happened. And she admitted that was when the decision was made. Oh, we were just having dinner. I'm having some wine. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get rid of all the nuclear power plants. German leaders have lost
cheap energy for poor people. We don't need that.
Let me just drink my wine. This delicious. By the way, you can't even get good wine in Germany. So she's.
What are you saying? Of course you can.
She can.
Ice wine. She can.
Riesling aus Leis would like to argue with you.
Yeah, what are you even talking about?
Okay, Riesling, you're right.
There's a whole Weinstrasse. There's a whole region there.
That's true. All right. I
don't
bite
say
my tongue.
things like that.
Das ist verboten. All right. Entschuldigung. German leaders have lost their grip on Grover, pipe down over there. So German leaders have lost their grip on reality, and they're pushing this country towards economic collapse. I'm going to argue in a moment it's all on purpose. I'm going to show you the details of this, and we'll know exactly what they're doing. I'm going to show you. First and most importantly, though, Germans are in for a very cold, very dark winter thanks to German leadership and European leadership working in lockstep to drive German citizens and European citizens right off of fossil fuels. And they're using the Ukraine war to do this as cover to implement the Great Reset agenda. So they will tell us that it's all about Ukraine. They will tell us it's about Putin. It's not. It's convenient cover. It's total bullshit. And they're going to try to push their citizens towards renewables like solar and wind and taking people's farms and land. They're doing it right before our eyes. This is the best summation so far that I've heard of this madness. Listen.
Why has the Dutch government, a guy called Rutte, the prime minister, completely owned by the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab, why has he just announced that the Netherlands, the second biggest exporter of food in the world, is targeting farmers to destroy them and get them off the land, which is where all these farming protests in the Netherlands have come from? At a time of food shortages and supply chain problems, you are targeting the second biggest exporter of food in the bloody world to destroy its farming base? Why are you doing that? If people depend on you for what's left of the food, you control them. Where food is abundant and cheap, you do not control them. Where energy is cheap and abundant, you do not control them. Scarcity equals dependency equals control. And that's why they're targeting the food chain, they're targeting the energy supply, they're targeting everything.
Donald Thomas, no, in our chat, that is not Mike Myers. That's David Icke. Does kind of look like Mike Myers from time to time. No, excellent summation of this. Spot on, spot on. You see, these leaders are lying to you right into your faces. They're pretending that this is all Putin's fault. They're saying that, hey, we didn't see this coming. That's total horseshit. By the way, horseshit is great fertilizer. Former German Chancellor Angela Merkel shut down Germany's nuclear program. In fact, even the Liberal Atlantic magazine called Merkel's decision at the time in December a huge mistake. I had this in my archives. And here's the Atlantic piece by David Frum. The West's nuclear mistake. No government that really regarded climate change as its top energy priority would close nuclear plants before the end of their useful lives. Oh, and Angela Merkel did that. Yeah. Not eins, not zwei, not drei. 17 of them. 3 months before the war in Ukraine. When it was clear that plans were already on the table, already in place. They already had all of these plans drawn up to sanction Russia. They were there. They were already lined up. They knew exactly what to target and what to go after. These weren't things that were then somehow promulgated because of the Ukraine war. That's garbage. So European leaders already had the sanctions in place. Vladimir Putin in 2018 even referenced the sanctions and said, you know what, bring them on, because it'll mean a stronger Russia. Watch.
Значит, вы знаете, я иногда думаю, что было бы хорошо для нас, если бы те, кто хочет вводить санкции, ввели бы все санкции, которые только можно ввести, и как можно быстрее. Это развязало бы нам руки для защиты своих национальных интересов такими средствами, которые мы считаем наиболее эффективными для нас. А вообще это очень вредно. Это вредит тем, кто это делает.
Well, that turned out to be a little bit prophetic.
I mean, watch that over and over again. That would be hard. That would be hard. It would hit the countries hardest that impose those sanctions, right? Really prophetic. And now we wake up this morning and we see this headline that Russia's Nord Stream 1 pipeline shut down for the foreseeable future. Here's the BBC. Nord Stream 1, Russia shuts major gas pipeline to Europe. And that means prices skyrocketing in Germany. You see, when Angela Merkel shut down those nuclear reactors, cut off 1/4 of its energy production, thanks to nuclear power in Germany. And the promise, of course, is that they would replace it with renewables, right? Wind and solar. That didn't happen. If it was ever going to happen, it wasn't. A decade ago, Germany operated 17 nuclear reactors, 17 of them. They produced nearly 1/4 of the country's electricity, carbon-free electricity, all shut down. That was her goal
just out of curiosity,
by 2022.
Were they updated plants or were they still using old technology? Just out of curiosity, like what was the reasoning they gave?
8 of them were old, but most of them. So so what's 17 minus 8 is 9. So 9 of them were relatively new, right? So yes, 8 of them could have been. The goal at the time was to finally build new ones, right? Mm-hmm. Build new ones and replace the older technology, right? We want to move from those first, second generations to the third and fourth generation nuclear.
And I believe they also stopped down on construction of some of the new ones as well.
Yeah, they halted construction of the new ones.
Yes.
On top of that, journalist William Engdahl says it best in this newest piece out yesterday. Europe's energy Armageddon from Berlin and Brussels, not Moscow. And he writes, I'm going to read this. Keep this on the screen if you would kindly, young sir. On August 22nd, the exchange-traded market price for natural gas in the German trading hub Europe Gas Hub was trading more than 1,000% higher than a year ago. Most citizens are told by the Olaf Scholz German regime that the reason is Putin and Russia's war in Ukraine. The truth is quite otherwise. EU politicians and major financial interests are using Russia to cover what is a made in Germany and Brussels energy crisis. The consequences are not accidental. Now, here's the juice of it. It's not because politicians like Scholz or German Green Economy Minister Robert Habeck, nor EU Commission Green Energy Vice President Franz Timmermans are stupid or clueless. Corrupt and dishonest, maybe, yes. They know exactly what they're doing. They are reading a script. It's all part of the EU plan to de-industrialize one of the most energy-efficient industrial concentrations on the planet. This is the United Nations Green Agenda 2030, otherwise known as Klaus Schwab's Great Reset. Boom. But Germany's leaders think we're all stupid. They think Germans are stupid. Their leaders do anyway. That it's all about Ukraine. Here's Germany's foreign minister says we have to ratchet up the sanctions. Now she's saying this in German, translated onto I think it's Ukrainian television. So there's English subtitles on this. This is what she has to say about this. And this is unbelievable to listen to what she says about ratcheting up sanctions against Russia at a time when Germans are suffering. Watch.
В статье есть и другие предложения по 8-му пакету санкций. Мы, как Федеративная Республика Германия, также внесли предложение по этому поводу. Именно поэтому, да, мы рекламируем, что будет еще один пакет санкций. Но опять же, мы должны быть в состоянии выдержать и этих остальных 7 со всей силы. И это в первую очередь относится к энергетическому вопросу с российским правительством.
And now she tells the German people today, this is unbelievable. This has gone viral this afternoon, that at a conference, basically she's going to put Germany to the last. We're going to put Ukraine first, Germany last. She tells Germans that we're going to put Ukraine first no matter what my German voters think or how hard their life gets in Germany. Watch.
But if I give the promise to people in Ukraine, we stand with you as long as you need us, then I want to deliver, no matter what my German voters think, but I want to deliver to the people of Ukraine. And this is why, for me, it's important to be always very frank and clear. And this means every measure I'm taking, I have to be clear that this holds on as long as Ukraine needs me. We are facing now winter time where we will be challenged as democratic politicians. People will go on the street and say, we cannot pay our energy prices. And I will say, yes, I know, so we help you with social measures. But I don't want to say, okay, then we stop the sanctions against Russia. We will stand with Ukraine, and this means the sanction will stay also in wintertime, even if it gets really tough for politicians.
Okay, she needs to run for office in a country where she does intend to help her voters.
Right. Maybe she could run for
if
Ukraine.
I can just kind of...
What country is that?
Her ass better... Her ass better be chopping up her damn piano this winter to burn in her fireplace, because you know for a fact there's no way in hell that she's going to suffer at all. And so to say, like, I don't care what my German voters say, but I'm willing to let them suffer for my promise to Ukraine, that's bullshit.
It's such bullshit. When she's like, people will say to me in the streets, I can't pay my energy bill. She's like, yeah, I know, we'll get you some social help. That helps me not tonight, which is cold. That's crazy
Yeah, we'll
to
give
have
you-
the gumption to say that.
We'll give you a tax rebate 4 months from now. So I know you'll be freezing tonight. Remember, how many times do we have to tell you on this show, cold kills more than heat, right? People hear about the heat stroke stories of because we always hear those climate crisis stories, like it's really hot in the UK and there's a few people that died. Yeah, what about the thousands that died because they have no heat during the winter? We don't hear those stories.
Well, and my feeling is,
I
this,
really hope that when
you'll have people that will, parents that will go without food to get their kids food and stuff. But once it starts to affect, like their kids are freezing and you have kids dying and all of that, you're going to see mass civil unrest. And I think that's one thing that could bring both sides together, is that kind of thing, because it's affecting their kids. They can't, you know what I mean? Like, it's like if you're getting ready to go homeless, it's like you will steal food to feed your children.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this is, again, civilization will come unhinged without energy, right? We will see the absolute collapse of civilization without energy, a way to heat your home, provide for your family, cook food. Like, we're literally talking about these basics. Like, this is what we're dealing with now. And you've seen the stories we've told you about, of course, about Germany and all of these people going to the forest to chop wood, to get as much wood as they can for the coming winter, because it's going to be absolutely brutal. And then we have breaking news this afternoon. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, what sense does it make to take basic human rights from one population to give weapons of destruction to another?
That's a good point.
Well, you do it, and you use that as cover, because I think the point I'm trying to make here is that, like, you're using all of that as just a smokescreen to literally force people off of fossil fuels, right? Force people off of fossil fuels, and push this narrative that Ukraine and Putin are to blame. We're going to send weapons. We got to continue to do all of this, and Russia has grown. Ruble prices have outstripped the euro and into 1-to-1 and against the U.S. dollar. So who are you hurting? And you saw
and they're
Putin.
going to have their heat. They're going to have their food. They're going to have everything that they need this winter.
Yeah.
So we had some breaking news this afternoon on these gas price issues. Fiora Isabel on Twitter tweeting this: breaking, according to the head of Gazprom, at the peak of demand, she's a journalist, the demand in autumn and winter, 1,000 cubic meters of gas will cost more than $4,000. Already, the price of gas on the London Stock Exchange has exceeded $2,900, with news of the new suspension of the Nord Stream pipeline for repairs. Then she says, it looks like Europe is in for a long winter. Perhaps that's why people are starting to protest and push back on the self-demolition of the economy. Look at that, self-demolition of the economy.
Did you guys see the stories this today coming out of California and Colorado, where people went to adjust their thermostats because it was hot, and their thermostats told them they could not change the temperature in their house because there was the governor said we need to conserve energy?
Yeah. I mean, look, we've been talking about this. For the past 3 days, I've had this theory, and I know it's maybe sound conspiratorial. Maybe it's Alex Jones level stuff, but hey, what? Alex Jones is pretty much always right? Except when he says some stupid stuff. But most of the time, Like the stuff he says, you know, it ends up coming true.
All right, just tell us what your theory is. Don't put yourself with other people like that. You don't have to be on an Alex Jones level. Like on an Alex Jones, I'm a 1.5. Alex Jones is
On an Alex Jones scale, okay. Well,
how about what is the Clayton Morris?
What is the Clayton Morris scale? Again, I keep saying I think we're in for a climate lockdown. We had lockdowns for the pandemic. We're seeing this now in multiple states. We're seeing this in different countries. Australia releasing a report on the benefits of locking down for climate change. And you see it in California, you're not allowed to charge your cars, right?
Mm-hmm.
That report we had yesterday. So you're not allowed to charge your electric cars. Oh, and you can't drive your gas cars because of heat. So stay home. We can't afford the air conditioning. Let's keep the temperatures down. Now this Colorado story, we're not going to let you turn your thermostats. We're not going to let you control those things.
Which would be
also happened
fine
in California.
But as which would be fine if we all decided, hey, this is going to help with our carbon emissions. But the point that Philip likes to make here on the show very often is like, okay, then you better put restrictions on enterprise too, because it's really mostly big companies that are doing things that harm the environment. It's not necessarily individual homes. So, okay, who are they going to first, right? Not big business, not the military.
The military is the biggest offender, right?
You can't use a single-use item.
Right. You can't use a plastic bottle or a plastic grocery bag. Yeah. But the military continues to send missiles and ships all around the world, and is the biggest carbon offender in the world.
Right. It's so great that we cannot like put our thermostat 1 centimeter, one degree higher. But at the same time, we can bomb places, right? Which definitely have a carbon impact.
There's absolutely no talk of, okay, at Amazon, let's run half the robots and let's extend people's shipping time by like 5 days. So we can conserve energy in the warehouse. So we'll get slower shipping. Not as much will be running, but they can't do that.
How dare you even say that?
No way.
I hope we don't get suspended.
I need my poppets delivered immediately for my daughter or whatever the hell people order, like
poppets, freaking poppets. Those are landfill too.
We need to get our stuff from China. Oh, and by the way, this afternoon, the liquefied natural gas, there's reports that now Germany and Europe are starting to get liquefied natural gas from China. Just think about the circuitous logic in all of this, right? So we're going to shut down and not get it from Russia, but we're then going to just start buying it from China.
I mean, it'd be nice if there was a real alternative use of fuel, but again, we've talked about many times, solar and wind isn't it, especially given that we're moving into the winter, which has shorter days, so less sunlight, right? That's not going to help. We need something that really can replace fossil fuels, and leaders seem to have no interest in research and development and finding those things. In fact, the West has halved its investments in research and development budgets since the 80s, right? So we're not really trying. And solar came from the Mars lander, or Mars rover. That's a technology that like the government took from NASA or borrowed from NASA, or not the government, private industry borrowed from NASA and said, this is a good idea, right? So like, where is the real innovation here that will get us out of this? It's just not here yet. And until we admit that, then we're having policies that harm people.
Well, and part of the problem is sometimes those things do happen. Like there was this huge thing about phytoplankton that can be grown in the sun, in the desert, that can produce oil that you can actually drink. However, when something like that happens, the oil industry goes in and buys the patents and buries it.
Yeah.
So we're working against them as well for these technologies that could be better.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
Yeah, I have a story I'm working on different types of alternative energy sources that have been silenced for over 100 years. So we're working on that here on the channel, and so much other content here at Redacted. I hope all of you will subscribe. We're nearing 1 million subscribers. We may hit it almost in any minute. So will you be our 1,000,000th subscriber?
996,771.
Almost 1 million.
Okay.
Thank you so much. It's crazy. Thank you all of you who are seeking the truth on the, following us and being a part of our great community here. That's our whole goal. We just follow the truth. We follow the facts, and wherever they take us, outside of the propaganda of the mainstream media, that's our goal on this show. So please subscribe. We are here every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time live. This is a live show. And then you can watch the replays later, of course. A little public service announcement. If you're watching the replay later, we have a 30-minute countdown that we put on the very beginning of the show because we start at 3:30 Eastern so that we're ready to go right at 4 p.m. That gives YouTube and all the alerts and the notifications time to go out to everybody. That's why we do that 30-minute countdown. So you can always scrub ahead if you want. Just move it up 30 minutes and start the show right there.
Although if you're at this point of the show, you're about 2 hours past that 30 minutes. So that it will apply for next.
When does this happen in the show?
Right.
This happens now.
By that logic.
Well, we have a lot of new people here. So if you're new here,
So
just say hello
next time,
in the
if
chat.
it's not 4 p.m. Eastern and you've got that 30-minute countdown, you can just scrub it.
Yeah,
You're
scrub
allowed.
forward.
Or you could just start this one over, then skip that 30 minutes
could do
and
that
watch
too.
it again.
Right.
Randy Man says, I'm thinking about unsubbing and then resubbing to get to that 1 million. See, that won't work, Randy. The math simply won't work on that. Like
That's a net zero.
Yeah, it's a net zero. There's your net zero climate move. Don't do that. Don't do that. Just keep your subscription. It's free. You can be a subscriber and support what we do here. If you do want to become a channel member, we'd love that too. You can absolutely become a channel member as well. And for like a cup of coffee once a month, you can support us for like 99 cents a month to support independent journalism. We're going to get to your super chats in a second. But first, I want to tell you about how you can get 13 free stocks. 13 free stocks valued up to $32,500. In fact, they reached out to me today to say they've extended it through the end of September because it's been so successful. Because so many people are taking advantage of these free stocks, they've extended it now through September 30th. Our friends over at Moomoo, which is a trading platform, it's a NASDAQ listed company, commission-free trading. This is the platform that I use when I want to buy different stocks, ETFs, and trade and different things like that. All of them right here, options, stocks, everything right inside of the Moomoo platform. So even if you do nothing else with your stock account ever, you open it, you get those free stocks, and then you make an initial deposit, a very small deposit. I think I started my account with $100. Then you get access to those other stocks valued up to $32,000. They kind of do it like a lottery style. So they kind of spin a wheel and you might get an Apple stock, you might get a Google stock, it just depends, but valued up to that much. Anyway, so you open the account, get those free stocks, and then you can start learning. They have paper trading options. That means you don't even have to use any of your own money. You can just use some of their courses that they have inside of the app. It's totally free. Learn about the news alerts. See what's going on in the oil economy, in the gold economy right now. What's happening in the silver market. Just educate yourself. And while you're doing it, you got 13 free stocks. And then if you want to sell the stocks, great. Then you got cash in your account. Then you can take the cash and go out to dinner or save it, So whatever you want to do with it. The best part, if you're looking for a professional platform for research and trading, Moomoo is your platform with powerful functions. You can easily work smarter and become a great investor with the app in your pocket. And new users get that huge bonus. So sign up today. Go to Redacted. You have to use this URL, redacted.inc/Moomoo. It's redacted.inc/Moomoo. It works on your iPhone, your Android device, Windows, and Mac. They've got great apps across all platforms. So our thanks to them for supporting independent journalism. They love what we do here on this show. They've been a longtime supporter. So if you're thinking about learning how to do trading, look no further. Sign up with these guys. They're great supporters of what we do here, covering these stories. So our thanks to them.
All right, we're going to read your super chats and wrap up. David, do you have those ready?
I do. And we're less than 3,000 away. So if you're not subscribed, if the subscribe button down below is red, click it. Click it now.
Hit it and click it.
Click it. Click it good. Okay. We have John Norbo, Colleen Walker, JM, Tom, and see, Puzzled About God and Evolution, all with super stickers. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I love stickers.
And then we've got My Site says Clayton saw into the future when Redacted was created. Thanks.
Oh, thank you so much.
Cooler King, hello from Kentucky. The Iranian Putin, Z.
Hello.
Patrick Mwaba, the plan to kill the inspections and then blame Russia.
Yep. Well, that's what it looks like they tried to do that. Didn't work, but.
Yeah.
Controlled Demolition, Parallax View, Warren Beatty.
Oh, parallax view. Yeah, I saw that. I actually recorded that off of like AMC Movie Classics back in the day on VHS because I went to film school when I was first going in, and I watched that movie years ago with Warren Beatty. That's a great movie. I have to go back and watch that.
Fragile, I think it is, or fragile. I'm not sure. Maybe this is connected to American officials that are being offed lately by trucks. Maybe Secret Services are offing each other's officials. I guess that can be option number 3.
That was in relationship to the Russian officials who continue to be unluckily murdered.
Sluggo123 on Rumble says, please talk to our Rumblers too. I am talking to you guys. I see you guys. Trish says, is Moo for real? Anybody done it? Yes, it is for real. It's a NASDAQ listed company with, I think, 17 million users. So, yes. Oh, and Witness over on Rumble. Sorry. Go
ahead.
DW Delano says, have you ever seen Witness with Harrison Ford? Yes. Speaking of movies.
Lisa Butcher, thanks for your unbiased views on current events.
Thank you for listening, watching.
Robert Knight, it sounds like Azov is doing rogue assassinations and or with Western intelligence.
That is one
Salty
theory.
Ball. Yeah. Salty Ball. China is 100% a bad actor. How can I carry China's water? Remember Tibet, Tiananmen Square. Great leap forward. Come on.
I didn't say they weren't. I said this report is suspect, but I didn't say they're not a bad actor. I said I don't know for myself, and I'm not going to put much stock in this report.
Did you guys just start getting audio back to yourselves?
Yeah. We're getting feedback.
We are?
I am.
Oh, I'm not hearing that.
I'm not.
Oh, I heard Natalie. I heard it, Natalie.
Yeah, I hear it too.
I only hear it through Philip's setup. Like I hear I hear my voice through Philip's thing occasionally, but in the distance.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
White Lightning,
my headphones.
777 White Light. Ukraine borders on a country, Russia, that does have bioweapons and chemical weapons. Zelensky would be grossly negligent if he didn't have bioweapon countermeasure labs to mitigate the threat.
I guess we should all get bioweapons labs then. Maybe I'll set one up here in the house. I'm going to start doing Wuhan.
Isn't there saying what's good for the goose is good for the gander?
Sure.
That's right.
Is that covered by the Second Amendment in the U.S.? Is the Second Amendment cover bioweapons? Can I just start?
If I shoot it at you.
Gotcha.
Like in a dart.
Effie, Technica Show would be a fab guest for this topic. They have covered these camps extensively. An important convo when we give them trade. Thank you both.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll look for that.
Darren Arney, Tibet, Uyghur, Taiwan, previously Hong Kong, Tiananmen Square, U.S. is going to play this like a broken record.
Oh.
Yes, they will. Yes, they will.
Patricia, they sent an inspector there months ago. Where is her report?
This is it.
Right. This is the point, is that it's mentioned that she went there, but no actual firsthand accounts of her visit at all.
Neo chat, sad I can't say certain things in this chat. So much for freedom of speech. So just so you know, Neo, that has nothing to do with us. YouTube actually will delete your chats. And sometimes we see them, sometimes we don't. Sometimes they just delete them. There's no rhyme or reason as to why they do it, but they do. So that is not us. You guys pretty much can say anything unless you're outright just like being completely rude. We let you have conversations in here. So that is not us.
Like there's a viewer right now who's watching us kill something, said something about Pelosi. Now what YouTube, like you guys can't see that. YouTube blocked it. So we can see it. They hold it.
It says this comment is held for review. And then a lot of times we just can't get to it in time because the chat is moving pretty fast. But like that's definitely not. And in fact, earlier, my sister is in the chat. And when we talked about the Russian official who fell out of a hospital window, just wrote the word bullshit, and and it said this comment is held for review. Like that's obviously this is bullshit.
Tell me what her username is, and I'll make her an admin.
Oh,
I'll make her a moderator.
Then she's gonna get all kinds of. I'm not gonna say her name.
Don't do that. Yeah, but here's another example. Like here's a person named Lindsay. and it says SP. I don't know what SP means. SP, and she says, and this got held for review also by YouTube. It just says SP, don't be a dick.
Maybe super pissed.
Yeah. So don't be, I guess, yeah. I don't know. SP,
and then
don't
Neo
be a
Chaz
dick.
with another super chat. Could someone please listen to me? There are things the UN Human Rights Council hasn't addressed in Ukraine even before February 22nd.
Yes, we have addressed that here on the show before. Yeah.
Terry Toucan, g'day, you guys are number one. We love the truth you deliver. High fives and a beer.
Thank you so
Right
much.
back at ya.
I'll take that beer.
Corey Hackathon, and I kind of agree with Corey here, and I think we should do this on Monday because it will be our 1,000,000 subscriber Monday show. We know that's going to happen over the weekend. Redacted special, Clayton plays the Stratocaster behind him. So,
yes.
No thanks.
I'll have to blow the dust off of it.
Can I have that show off then?
Wow. Makes you.
Can't you play?
Why would you rather play it, Natalie?
Like a ukulele or
No.
bass or something?
No, she's not a musical bone in her body.
Bring Miles up with the piano. Ronnie McDeo, remember Trudeau just turned down a contract to supply Germany with LNG. I don't know what LNG is.
Okay, I don't either.
Liquid natural gas.
Oh, okay.
Well, thanks, Smarty Pants.
Yeah, no
Vanessa
problem. I guess
Blue
not
wishes
Smarty
our
Pants,
show
I
was on all day.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, it technically is. If you watch the live stream, then we have several videos come out. If you could just sit there and wait, maybe we could find some things for you to watch in between the uploads, and then you could just continue watching one
Right.
after the other.
Yes.
Christopher Dobby, are you aware of Professor Michael Michaux's work?
No.
Mm-mm.
Michauxs.
MICH.
Never heard of him.
HX. Okay.
Yeah, Michael, Professor. And that's all the super chats.
All right.
Ed Winston and Whitson in our chat says, I like what about halfway through Natalie takes on the cute librarian look and puts on the big glasses.
They're just reading glasses.
Clayton, brother, you are a lucky man, although I doubt you win many arguments. Yeah, well. Actually, I think I win a lot of arguments. Wouldn't you agree?
Am I really going to agree to that?
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't agree live.
Anyway.
Typing a nasty message to me right now, so I'll see it later.
All right. Well, that wraps up the show for today. Remember, we are not live on Fridays. We still have content for you, but we are live Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for your comments. And anything else you want to say?
No, I have to get the last word.
Uh-huh.
Can you handle it? Are you okay? You a little wound up?
The word with herd.
Uh-huh. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Yes, I cannot wait for our 1,000,000th subscriber. I'm going to tell a long story just to annoy Natalie right now.
Okay, we're going to go. We're going to go now.
A long story about
we don't want to hear about.
When I was 7 years old, I once went on a hike with my father.
No reminiscing.
And I didn't even know what her name was when I found her fault. We'll see you tomorrow.